We've heard it since we took the driver's seat.
My leg was outside, pinned between the ground and the roof of the truck.
The road is a hazardous place.
The year you get your driver's license is the most dangerous year of your life.
But safety behind the wheel can't wait until you get your learner's permit.
Children under 2 need to be riding in a car seat rear facing.
From the very young to teens just learning to drive. From distracted drivers.
There is no message that can't wait till you get to your destination.
To older drivers.
Birthdays don't cause crashes. It is really about health issues.
And beyond.
We can peel back layers and look at how specific bones react to the forces.
Understanding our limitations and our responsibilities on the road are critical for all ages to live a safe life behind the wheel. Reina Hernandez is having a homecoming of sorts. For months, she called the halls and operating rooms here at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center home. Today, even the smallest details evoke images of an ordeal that dramatically changed her life.
I remember just the lighting and the view, sort of laying in the bed from below. Some of the rooms would have maybe 8 lights in a circle, and some of the rooms would have this big, expansive circle with little lights.
Unfortunately, these aren't memories of a bad dream. They are recollections of a horrific crash that left her fighting for her very survival.
It was a couple of days before Christmas. We were driving down to visit my aunt, and everyone was sleeping in the car except for my mom and me. And then I remember all of a sudden just having this feeling that something had gone wrong. It happened quickly, but there's still this slow motion feeling of the lights hitting something, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, what's happening?
The truck carrying Reina and her family veered off the road. It struck a bridge embankment, sending the vehicle into a violent roll. When it came to rest, her family walked away virtually unscathed. But Reina, not wearing her seatbelt at the time, would not be so lucky.
I tried to do a bit of a self-check, and I couldn't feel my legs.
As rescue workers arrived to assist, the reality of Reina's circumstances emerged.
They realized that the truck was actually on top of my leg. My body was inside of the vehicle, but my leg was outside, pinned between the ground and the roof of the truck.
After carefully extracting Reina from the wreckage, she was rushed to nearby Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. There, a team of doctors, led by Chief Pediatric Trauma Surgeon Dr. Victor Garcia, assessed her condition.
It was one of the most devastating injuries. There was contamination as far as dirt and debris inside her wound. Her pelvis was fractured in multiple places. There was exposed bone. There was an enormous amount of blood loss, so she came in shock, but still awake, so to speak.
For Reina, the night of the crash was the beginning of an epic struggle. First to survive, and then to recover from her injuries. But for Dr. Garcia, the Hernandez's crash was the beginning of something else. It brought into focus a trend he had been tracking for some time: the immense disparity of motor vehicle-related injuries in Black and Hispanic populations.
We identified that African Americans and Hispanics actually had more years of life loss per mile driven than any other segment of the population. That to me was unconscionable.
Statistics show that African American and Hispanic children are 3 times more likely to die in a car crash than Caucasian children. Moved by these numbers, Dr. Garcia and his trauma team, in collaboration with Toyota, created a program called Buckle Up for Life, designed to address the root causes of this phenomenon.
We're going to be talking about motor vehicle safety.
Buckle Up for Life is a community-based program that uses the community to instruct its members on not only how do you address the barriers, for example, owning a car seat, but also how do you then install that car seat And why is it important, not only for you, but also for your children and your children's well-being?
Restraints in cars are not a new phenomenon. Ideas for keeping people safe in cars have been around since the 1800s. But a car seat designed to protect children in the event of a crash is a relatively new innovation of the 1960s. Since then, the technology to keep people safe in cars has quickly evolved. And today, along with massive public campaigns to promote the use of car seats and safety belts, riding in a car is a much safer endeavor.
Today, the first thing that 85%, 86% of the people do is buckle up. That's the first thing that people do. A lot of lives have been saved. If you have your seatbelt on, you're probably going to save your life in an accident. You're probably going to save a serious injury in an accident.
Despite advances in technology, vehicle crashes remain the leading cause of death for infants and toddlers in the United States, with Black and Hispanic children overrepresented compared to their population size.
Prevention is the best medicine.
Buckle Up for Life is working to address this disparity.
We believe that it is a combination of lack of education and lack of economic resources. Not everyone can afford a car seat. So with Buckle Up for Life, what we have set up to do is to break barriers.
To reach these goals, Buckle Up for Life started a three-prong approach, emphasizing proper car seat installation, education, and access to technology.
Everybody, thanks for coming. Today, I'm going to teach you how to install a car seat properly.
Director Gloria Del Castillo is one of the program's instructors.
Everybody, you know that car seats are the safest way to travel for children?
It's estimated over 70% of car seats are not properly installed. So Buckle Up for Life made this a major focus.
The safest place in the car is the back seat.
Proper installation begins with knowing which direction to place the car seat. Infants are more vulnerable to neck injury in a crash, so precautions must be taken to mitigate this.
Children under 2 years old need to be riding in a car seat rear facing.
First, the tethers on the car seat are attached to the manufacturer's anchors in the vehicle.
All you have to do is find your metal bars, make sure that my belt is routed through the correct belt path, and you hook the car seat in place. Once your car seat has been tethered to the vehicle, you need to make sure that it doesn't move more than an inch from side to side.
Correct installation is just the beginning.
Okay, Dayron. So we're going to get you into your car seat.
To maximize safety, the child must be properly strapped into the seat as well.
We don't want any padding in between the straps and our child. For forward-facing children, we want to make sure the straps are at or above the shoulder level. When children are small, their shoulders tend to be rounded, and that makes the straps fall off of the shoulders. We don't want that to happen. So the retainer clip will make sure that the harness stays over the shoulders, right, like that. One thing you can do is you take 2 fingers, and if you're able to pinch any webbing, then it's not snug enough.
The classes have proved very successful. But to educate people on the importance of car seats and seatbelts in the first place, Buckle Up for Life launched a program within minority communities. They partnered with an institution trusted in both the Hispanic and Black communities.
The role of the church in influencing the Hispanic community is something that was a no-brainer as far as using the church to influence human behavior that actually promoted the health and well-being of not only the child but also the parents.
Buckle Up for Life launched a series of after-service classes aimed at different age groups to disseminate critical information about vehicle safety.
If mom and dad are driving and they need to pay attention to the road, what do you guys need to do?
Do not disturb the parents or you might crash.
Young children are taught how to behave in the car and about what happens in a crash with an illustration using a toy car and an egg.
Let's see what happens. Hold that up for me. Ew. Now imagine if that was you and you weren't wearing your seatbelt. Okay?
In a room down the hall, teenagers are getting a more graphic explanation of what happens in a crash and learning about the dangers they will face as they begin their lives on the road.
85 miles an hour for 5 seconds. How far do you drive? 5.
With the use of interactive games and quizzes, the teens learn about distracted driving as well as the risks of drinking and driving.
Try to walk in a straight line.
Valuable lessons for young people facing a potentially dangerous time in their lives.
Stand up for yourself. You guys have a right to be safe. You have a right to get home safely. Don't be afraid to tell people that they have a responsibility to you as a passenger to take care of you and to help you out.
A final class taught to the parents covers crash dynamics and tries to address cultural and educational gaps among people in the Hispanic community, many of whom are new to our roads and highways.
We do not have in Latin America very many laws that address this issue. So when immigrants come to this country, they don't have the education, they don't have the habits, they don't have the culture of buckling up or having their children in car seats. Algo me pasa a mí.
These classes are often taught in Spanish, the primary language most of the participants speak.
¿Qué le pasa a ustedes?
But education can only go so far. For the program to truly be effective, everyone must have access to the life-saving technology being highlighted.
We provide the resources that they need to keep their children safe. In this case, we provide free car seats and booster seats to all of the families that come and participate in the program.
Reina's story is a clear example of the difference proper use of car seats can make in a crash. Her little brother, restrained in a car seat, was unhurt. Same circumstances, very different results.
I think if you need any comparison as far as the importance of child's passenger seats, you'd have to just look at the injuries sustained and the injuries spared. Her brother was hardly scathed. Had she been restrained, I doubt that she would have suffered the severity of the injuries that she had.
Though data is difficult to gather in terms of its success, there is little doubt that through education and increased access to technology, Buckle Up for Life is making an impact. So far, they've established programs in Kentucky, Ohio, Texas, Illinois, and California, with plans to eventually expand nationwide. For Reina, it's comforting to know that her long ordeal contributed to a program that is saving lives.
I feel blessed to be a part of it. Every single child that gets saved, every single injury that gets prevented, that child will go on to become an adult that will do things, great things, and you never know what those might be.
For Dr. Garcia, seeing Reina again is a reminder of the importance of the work he and the Buckle Up for Life team are doing. Her success as a lawyer, a Harvard graduate, and now an education administrator are proof that all segments of society need and deserve the resources to keep them safe.
An inspiration. If you took the comparison that this was an infectious disease, a scourge, a plague, there would be this outcry among the entire population. There would be this seeming disbelief that our government, our leaders are not doing something, and there would be a demand that something be done. There is something that can be done, and the equivalent of a vaccine that has eliminated smallpox and polio is child passenger safety. That is our vaccine.
As we reach our teens, we enter the first phase of our driving lives in which we actually get behind the wheel. It's an exciting time, but it can also be a dangerous one. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death for teens ages 16 to 19.
The year you get your driver's license is the most dangerous year of your life. The number of 16-year-olds who die in a car crash is greater than any other age from any other injury.
Jay Forbes is just one of millions of teenagers confronting that fact this year. 3 months ago, he got his driver's license.
it was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a little bit more free. I don't have to be humiliated by my mom and dad driving me around everywhere in a bright orange car.
For Jay, the next few months on the road are critical. He'll be developing a valuable set of skills that will accompany him through a lifetime of driving and navigating the most accident-prone segment of our driving lives.
Typically, 1 in every 5 teenagers is in some sort of a crash within their first 6 months of driving. So their crash rates are much, much higher than any other age group, and so we're very concerned about them in that regard.
Charlie Clower from the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute studies teen driving. She's working to understand why teens are more prone to crashes than other drivers. On a state-of-the-art track known as the Smart Road, she and her colleagues can safely expose teen drivers to a host of different driving experiences.
So what we do when we have teenagers out on the Smart Road is we really overload them as far as asking them to engage in a variety of secondary tasks, and then we present them with situations to see how they respond.
Today's subject will undergo a variety of tests designed to shed light on the phenomenon of high crash rates in teens.
Go ahead and pull out. And when I say begin, please send the following text message to Sherry. Hi, what's up? Can you repeat the message?
Hi, what's up?
Distractions on the road affect drivers of all ages, but teens, still unskilled at operating a vehicle and at recognizing potential dangers in advance, are particularly vulnerable when distracted.
Begin.
Do I use one hand, or should I use...
Whatever you normally use.
This test vehicle is equipped with sensors to track its speed, position in the lane, and the G-forces generated by driving. Cameras record video to determine how long he takes his eyes off the road to send a text or adjust the air conditioning. Simple tasks that can have dramatic consequences on a driver's performance.
When you are traveling at 55 miles per hour, you travel the length of a football field in about 4 seconds. So you are traveling a great distance in a very, very brief period of time, far more than most people realize.
Despite what many people think, data show that teens are not necessarily bigger risk takers than drivers of other ages. Rather, they lack the experience behind the wheel to recognize danger and to know when and how to perform potentially dangerous tasks.
They don't detect hazards in the road, and then when a potential hazard is in the roadway, then they still look away from the road and then end up getting in trouble. You're coupling their inability to detect hazards in the environment with not even looking in the environment. And so it really does impact their crash and near crash rates.
So how can teen drivers gain the valuable experience they need to stay safe during those first critical months? Experts agree there's one influential force in a teen's life that can dramatically affect their safety on the road: their parents.
In order to maintain their safety, the parents need to be very involved in their driver education and making sure that their teen is as safe as possible. They need to communicate with their teenagers the dangers of driving, and they need to place limits upon their teenager.
Jay's parents, Laura and Pat, hope their involvement in their son's driving education will influence his decisions on the road.
Having your only child get behind the wheel of a car can be really scary. You find yourself just hoping he's making the right decisions. Is he going to see the pedestrian coming across the crosswalk? Is he going to see the light turning yellow? You know, so split-second decisions that you know can result in just about anything happening. That's what you worry about.
Concern for teenage drivers is nothing new, but the dangers they face on the road today are far different from what teens faced even a few years ago. To give them an edge in the effort to keep their son Jay safe, the Forbes family turned to something called an electronic driving coach.
The idea of the electronic coaching is when the teenager does something in the vehicle that's considered risky, that triggers data collection to start.
Tina Bernetti-Sayer studies teen driving at Toyota's Collaborative Safety Research Center, which is focused on improving automotive safety for the entire industry. She knows that a teen's understanding the mistakes made behind the wheel is key to their learning safe driving habits.
So the data collection is normally kind of a forward view, a face view. It's going to have some vehicle parameters. Sometimes we call this thing a co-pilot. It's a system sitting in the vehicle with you.
For Jay Forbes, this is what that co-pilot looks like. a small device that records images of him behind the wheel and of the road ahead, as well as things like speed, acceleration, and G-forces that occur while turning and braking. Jay's initial reaction to hearing about the program was less than enthusiastic.
I was like, really? You want to have a camera in my car? You already watch me enough as it is. And they told me a little bit more, and I was like, okay, it's maybe not so bad. It doesn't record you all the time, but it records you some of the time. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot.
Jay drives himself to and from school every day. Any risky behavior he engages in behind the wheel is recorded by the electronic coach. Let's say Jay takes a corner too fast. The electronic coach recognizes this and flags what he did as an incident. The footage is then uploaded to a database and assigned a numeric value based on its level of risk. All of Jay's incidents are compiled and sent to the Forbuses.
Every week we get an email, and basically the email says your student's score is blank. If it's a perfect 0 score, then we don't even need to go to the website and do anything because he's done great that week. Oh, there's your graph.
There's the graph. Look where I am now.
Your risk level is low as of yesterday. You're doing really good. If it's anything above 0, then it will give us a link that we click on, and it goes straight to the site, and we can watch the video of exactly what he did.
The key to electronic coaching is feedback.
You're taking your turns too fast.
Okay.
You've got to slow down. You have a tendency to accelerate through your turns instead of slowing down and making a smooth turn.
Not only can young drivers see where they have made mistakes, but parents can offer advice on how to better react next time or avoid a situation altogether.
Through that turn. So when you pull onto that street, if some kid...
The point is for the parent and the teenager to sit down and discuss this. It's this ability to relive a single experience and turn that into essentially multiple learning experiences.
Tying the program to incentives and consequences is also important to its success. A 0 can mean a gift card to buy some music or food, but a high score earned by risky behavior might mean suspension of his driving privileges and a return to the dreaded parental escort to school.
One of the hardest things for a teenager to do is to be driven by their parent to school in the morning when they've been driving the car. And that is a powerful tool that you can use to get them on the right track.
It's turning right this time, and you did the same thing.
Yeah, I know.
And your music is too loud.
An electronic coach can be a valuable tool in helping teens through this dangerous time. But there is no substitution for parents taking an active role in the learning process of their teen drivers.
I think the most important thing that parents can do for their kids who are learning to drive is to spend a lot of time with them driving and to focus on some specific situations that lead to crashes, whether it be hazard awareness, gap perception, following distance, those kinds of things. Some states say you have to spend 20 hours or 30 hours or 50 hours behind the wheel. Those are minimum standards. A parent, in many cases, and depending on the kid, should recognize that their kid needs far more than that to become a safe driver.
To assist parents, teens, and even educators, there are plenty of online resources packed with valuable information. Sites like Toyota Teen Driver offer advice about safety on the road.
What I would say to teenagers, if I wanted to keep all teenagers safe in the world, is I would say, please, 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 do not engage in any other type of distracting task while you are learning to drive. You simply must keep your eyes on the forward roadway and be paying attention all the time and learn really safe driving habits early on in order to keep yourself safe.
The next stop on our journey highlights a phenomenon that affects people at every age. It's a behavior some are calling epidemic. From putting on makeup, to horsing around with passengers, from adjusting the radio, to using his cell phone. Distracted driving is one of the most deadly activities people undertake in their daily lives.
The Department of Transportation estimates that 10% of all drivers are in some way, shape, or form engaged with a cell phone at any given moment. And that's a huge number. I mean, this threat really didn't exist to any great degree 5 or 10 years ago.
David Teeter is the National Safety Council's expert on distracted driving. He's on a mission to understand and end driver distraction. His main focus is cell phones.
About 25% of all crashes somehow involve cell phone use. That is scary. I mean, if you think about it, the #1 killer of teens, car crashes, the #1 cause of unintentional deaths in this country, and maybe as many as 25% of those involve cell phone use.
For David Teeter, reducing vehicle crashes due to driver distraction has become his life's work. It's a passion that grew out of personal tragedy.
This is Knapp and the East Belt Line in Grand Rapids Township in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And this is the intersection where the crash happened and where we lost Joe.
On a cold day in January 2004, David's wife, Judy, and 12-year-old son, Joe, were on their way to an after-school activity when they stopped at a red light at this intersection.
She was about the 3rd or 4th car in line, and the light turned green for the cross traffic here on Knapp. But as she got here, these 2 southbound lanes, there were 4 cars and a school bus stopped in the right-hand lane. There was nobody in the left-hand lane. And a driver talking on her cell phone blew past the 4 cars and the school bus.
The vehicle broadsided their car, injuring Judy and taking Joe's life.
The onboard crash recorder said she never touched her brakes, and witnesses saw that she was talking on her cell phone and looking straight out the window.
For David and Judy Teeter, the pain of losing their son was almost too much to bear.
Yeah, everybody says it's a parent's worst nightmare. It's worse than that. It's not one of those things you just work real hard on and get through, and a year later everything's better. It changes your life forever. You know, when you look back, it just seems so senseless.
To cope with their tragedy, David and Judy began looking for answers. How could the driver who struck Joe and Judy be seemingly blind to the dangers in front of her? David Teeter combed through the accident reports and eyewitness testimonies. The evidence pointed to distracted driving.
Driver distraction really falls into 3 different categories. Visual distraction when you take your eyes off the road, mechanical distraction when you take your hands off the wheel, and cognitive distraction when your mind is not fully engaged in the task of driving. And using a cell phone generally causes all 3 forms of distraction. That's why it's so dangerous.
To understand just how dangerous, researchers at the University of Iowa's National Advanced Driving Simulator are studying the effects of distractions on drivers. Using a state-of-the-art driving simulator known as the NADS-1, they can closely mimic the driving experience. It lets the researchers subject drivers to tasks too dangerous for the open road.
The NADS-1 driving simulator has a very sophisticated motion base. It's a 13-degree of freedom motion base, so it can provide motion cues in a variety of different ways.
Omar Ahmed is the director of operations at the lab. He supervises experiments that take place in the simulator and oversees the technology at the facility.
It has a turntable that can turn 330 degrees in either direction. It has an XY platform that has a travel of 64 feet in the X and Y directions. So go ahead and get in.
Today, Omar and his team are examining how cell phone use affects driver performance.
And adjust your seat so that your feet can reach the pedals.
Visual distractions are monitored with a system of cameras and software known as the eye tracker.
Please go ahead and start eye tracking.
Thank you. Please look straight ahead as if you were driving.
I think the camera needs to go down too. Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you.
Please begin to drive now.
With a 360-degree high-definition screen and movable pod that simulates G-forces, the NADS-1 is designed to give the subject the most realistic experience possible.
Okay, so the person is driving the simulator and they have established a baseline data. So now we're going to send them a text message and we will see if we can pick up some kind of a performance decrement in their driving. Okay, the text message is being sent.
The driver receives the text. Her hands come off the wheel. Inside the control room, the eye tracker records her vision moving away from the road. As the virtual traffic slows, the driver is too distracted to respond.
Oh my gosh.
In the process of using the cell phone and answering the text message, the car in front of them braked and they weren't able to respond to it and they had a collision.
The driver was both visually and mechanically distracted when she crashed. The third form of distraction, cognitive distraction, is much harder to measure than the other two. But understanding it may hold clues to the crash that killed Joe Teeter. At the MIT Age Lab in Cambridge, Massachusetts, scientists like Dr. Brian Reamer are trying to better understand how our brains work while driving. One of the biggest misconceptions is how skilled people are at performing two tasks simultaneously.
We're really terrible multitaskers. If you think of the multi-core processor per se, in modern computers that are doing multiple things at once, the brain really doesn't work that way. Does a little of task A, switches over to task B, goes back to A and back to B, and there's a cost associated with switching back and forth.
That cost is a decrease in a driver's ability to quickly react to a dangerous situation. That makes people more vulnerable to dangers on the road when texting or even talking on the phone.
If you're involved in some activity that's not related to driving, it takes us time to switch back to that activity. It takes us longer to react, and we're more likely to be in an automobile collision.
Dr. Reamer has a variety of tools at his disposal to study distracted driving, including a simulator in the lab built from a specially modified Volkswagen Beetle known as Miss Daisy.
All the different aspects of distraction begin to paint a picture of what we do when we drive. Because by and large, we drive and do things, whether that's listening to the radio, interacting with navigation information, or doing other things that really may not be quite appropriate for the vehicle at different times.
Visual distractions, like looking away from the road to send a text, are easier to study and are known to cause crashes. But some researchers see cognitive distractions, like carrying on a phone conversation, even in hands-free mode, as major contributors as well. Though data to back this up is difficult to pin down.
Cognitive demands are definitely an issue. How big of an issue, we really don't know. It's very hard to study and characterize what we can't see. We know the brain's working. We know that has an effect on both behavior, our decision-making on the road, but how that corresponds to accidents, very difficult. At the point before an accident, how do you characterize how much someone was thinking? We don't know yet.
So directly blaming a crash on the act of talking on the phone itself is difficult, if not impossible. Still, Dr. Reamer and other researchers are uncovering physical clues that support the dangers of cognitive distraction.
When you drive normally, when you're not necessarily distracted, we tend to be very curious about scanning the environment, and so your eyes are moving around quite a bit. When you're on the phone, your eyes become much more focused and don't scan as much.
Studies show that normal patterns of eye movements are narrowed when a driver is distracted cognitively. They also show that distraction limits the ability to detect oncoming dangers to our left and right, as well as the speed at which one recognizes dangers right in front of us.
From an appearance, she looks like she's looking at the road. But in reality, eyes in the road really does not equal mind on the road.
That's a good picture, so.
David and Judy Teeter believe this may be what caused the driver of the vehicle to run the stoplight, leading to the crash that killed their son. And though the evidence is not black and white, one thing they do know for sure is that keeping the roads safe means taking a proactive approach.
Understanding exactly what's going on in the human brain when they're driving a vehicle may be something we're never able to determine accurately. I think we should keep trying and we should keep looking. But we have a lot of experimental research. We have a couple of epidemiological studies. We have a whole bunch of examples of crashes that seem to indicate that when our mind is not engaged in the task of driving, we aren't driving as well.
In fact, in December of 2011, the National Transportation Safety Board called for a ban on all texting and cell phone use while driving, including hands-free devices. But some experts say widespread adoption is unlikely. One thing all agree on is that driver distraction takes many forms. And to be as safe on the road as possible, we need to make driving our focus.
The bottom line is this. Each of us has to take personal responsibility for the safety of those that are in the car and the safety of those that are around us when we get behind the wheel of a car. Buckle up first, put the texting device or cell phone in the glove compartment, both hands on the wheel, both eyes on the road. If we do that, we will save a lot of lives and injuries.
As we enter the next phase of life behind the wheel, we join the fastest growing segment of the driving population. In the next 10 years, the number of people on the road 65 and older is expected to grow dramatically in the United States.
In 2000, we had about 12% of the U.S. population age 65 and older, and by 2030, we're looking at about 20% of the population being age 65 and older.
This group has logged more miles on the road than any generation before it. Julie Lee is Vice President of the AARP Driver Safety Program. She believes keeping people in this age group driving may actually be an important factor in maintaining a healthy society.
It's important that we keep people as independent as possible and driving as long as possible, because once you stop that, you are at risk for isolation issues and loneliness and depression and those kinds of things.
Independence is important, but keeping older drivers on the road comes with some safety concerns. Though their crash rates are declining, other than teens, drivers over 70 are still the most likely to be involved in a collision. But the reasons for these elevated crash levels are not as straightforward as people might think.
I think the biggest misconception is that older drivers' driving is impaired because they're older. Birthdays don't cause accidents or crashes. It is really about health issues. And people have health issues at different ages in their life.
At 79 years old, Dick Fisher is still enjoying a safe and happy life behind the wheel. He understands that driver safety is more than just a numbers game.
Aging is a different process, I suppose, for everyone who goes through it. We have to consider the individual's own personal well-being and background before we start labeling them as being too old to do this or too old to do that.
Health, not age, is the limiting factor in a driver's safety. But as people grow older, their fitness inevitably declines. Researchers like Lisa D'Ambrosio at the MIT Age Lab are working to understand the physical limitations brought on by age that affect driving abilities.
Some of the changes that we experience as we age that make the driving test more difficult include our cognitive and perceptual visual changes. So our ability to take in a lot of information from the environment quickly, our ability to scan the environment quickly. Also our reaction time changes as we age.
In addition to cognitive declines, older drivers also experience diminishing eyesight, hearing, and flexibility. D'Ambrosio and her colleagues at MIT have come up with innovative ways to better understand the effect these declines have on activities like driving.
Let me introduce you to the MIT Age Lab's Agnes, the Age Gain Now Empathy System. So Agnes is as you see, a head-to-toe empathy suit designed to help younger adults experience what it's like to feel older. She has some yellow glasses on to reduce vision and to represent the yellowing of the lens, of our eye lens as we age, and a neck brace here to restrict neck mobility. She has wrist guards on her wrists and stretchy bands on her elbows and knees to reduce flexibility. And she's also got some gloves on to reduce our sense of touch as we get older.
Suits like Agnes can help engineers and designers build cars that address some of the issues older drivers face behind the wheel.
Can you reach back easily and get the seatbelt and connect it? Can you adjust the seat easily? Can you adjust the mirror so that you can see? What happens to our neck as we turn to check our blind spot before we change lanes? So those kinds of actions that younger adults might take for granted, not even think about when we get in the car, Agnes can draw attention to.
For drivers like Dick Fisher, innovation in tomorrow's cars to compensate for declines in mobility and vision will lead to a safer driving experience. But extending one's time behind the wheel also needs to be a personal responsibility, and taking a proactive approach to staying healthy is the key.
I think the first thing is to continue to always live a healthy lifestyle. Exercise, eat right, get regular checkups, get your eyes checked, your hearing checked, all of those things that you would do, and do it on a regular basis.
Following these steps can greatly extend a life on the road. But even a healthy lifestyle doesn't come with guarantees, and there comes a time when one's safety behind the wheel must be addressed. Dick Fisher recently confronted some difficult questions regarding his wife, Lee.
Unfortunately, about 2 years ago, Lee was diagnosed with some sort of disorder, and it took quite a while to figure out what it was.
The diagnosis of a debilitating disease was a blow to the entire family, and Lee's symptoms soon called for an examination of her driving abilities.
After a year or so, she took a few tests, and some of them involving spatial relationships. And the doctor at this point said, you really shouldn't be driving. So she reluctantly gave up driving and hasn't driven since.
The doctor's recommendation was difficult to accept, and it meant Dick had to assume more of the family responsibilities. But it helped the Fisher family address a sensitive issue that many will reluctantly have to face.
It's probably one of the hardest things as adult children to deal with your parents or your grandparents, and that whole issue about whether or not they are continuing to be safe on the road.
AARP's goal is to keep older drivers on the road as long as it's safe to do so. And recognizing the warning signs is critical to knowing when a loved one's safety on the road might be compromised.
They may not notice a stop sign, or they kind of run through things, or that other drivers are honking at them. And the other thing that we recommend is you walk around the car and look for paint scrapes or dents or dings on one side of the car. Those are all indications that maybe something's going on, maybe a conversation needs to happen.
AARP's website contains a program called We Need to Talk that provides strategies for the process of ending a person's driving career, including when and how to bring up the conversation.
You have to go into the conversation with compassion and understanding, and, really help that person understand that it is all about safety, not only their own, but everybody else's around them.
But keeping a loved one safe may not mean cutting out driving altogether. Limiting the amount of driving a person does, something many older drivers do on their own, is one way to extend time behind the wheel.
So one would be limiting your nighttime driving. The second would be driving when the road isn't as congested, what we call 10 to 2 or 10 to 3 drivers. Don't drive during inclement weather. If it's pouring down rain, there's no reason to get out behind the wheel.
The issue of stopping a loved one from driving permanently is an emotional one. Safety concerns should come first. But experts like Lisa D'Ambrosio at MIT say the person's well-being and lifestyle also need to be taken into account.
You still want to make sure that the important things in life can get done. Things like going to the grocery store or going to the doctor, sure. But also things like being able to make the golf match or meet up with friends at the local coffee shop in the mornings. Making sure that if we're going to take driving out of the equation, we don't take living out of the equation.
To assist in its goal of keeping older drivers behind the wheel, AARP created a national driver safety program. Aimed at tuning up driving skills and updating knowledge of the rules of the road, AARP Driver Safety is giving people like Dick Fisher the tools to stay on the road safely.
AARP Driver Safety is for the 50-plus population, and it basically is a refresher course to allow people to stay on the road longer and be more independent and continue to be mobile.
Though more needs to be done to accommodate older drivers, Experts say we are looking at a generation that has the potential to drive longer and safer than any before it.
We as a society are very conscious about our health and physical fitness and all of those things. So I think the outlook for the future is good from a standpoint of a driver at 40, looking at driving for another 40 years. I think that things will be safer.
Each phase of life behind the wheel presents its own rewards and its own challenges. But whatever obstacles encountered along the way, rest assured that people are working hard to make tomorrow's cars as safe as possible.
The whole purpose of any technology that we implement in a car is to make the driver a better, safer driver. We want technology that benefits the driver, that keeps them out of trouble as much as possible.
New safety measures don't necessarily mean brand new technology. One potentially life-saving innovation is growing out of equipment already in use.
A byproduct of some of the electronic coaching that's being done both in research and in practice is that crashes are captured. And so we have a project that essentially takes those crashes and analyzes them in more detail to complement our other crash research.
Dr. Dan McGeehee of the University of Iowa is studying this footage. His goal is to use the video to better understand the ways a crash causes injury.
We can show when a head hits a windshield. We can show a person being ejected into the back seat. We can show a person being ejected out of a window.
Dr. McGeehee has put together what he has dubbed the GO Team, a group of medical professionals that examines crash footage and compares it to the injuries sustained. Their latest meeting includes the investigation of an historic event captured on video.
Today we will go through the first ever captured ejection of 2 occupants in a rollover crash, where we're able to look at their medical record and essentially understand how they were injured, how they were ejected.
2 teens in a pickup truck barreled down a dirt road in rural Wyoming.
Gravel road, showing off on the second date.
Before long, a little fun turns into a whole lot of trouble. Though unbelted and ejected from the truck, both teens survived. Armed with their medical records, the GO Team walks through the crash frame by frame to see what actually caused their injuries.
If we look at her, we see her hip, and see her head as that neck is at a very sharp angle.
Dr. McGeehee believes the work he and the GO Team are doing could one day save lives. If crash recorders were to become standard in all vehicles, trauma surgeons could estimate the injuries sustained in a crash before even laying eyes on the patient.
We essentially beam the video of a crash into the trauma room so that even before emergency responders make it to the scene, we can see exactly what happened. And that helps on a number of levels. Does it need a basic life support paramedic or an advanced life support paramedic or a helicopter?
Dr. McGeehee's work could help give crash victims the best chance of survival after an injury. But another new innovation in auto safety might help limit those injuries in the first place.
I can adjust our frame and view it from different vantage points, which is quite an advantage when you want to investigate a specific part of the crash.
Engineer Scott Gazik of Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center is part of the Global Human Body Model Consortium. His organization, as well as Toyota's Total Human Model for Safety program, are working to create virtual crash test dummies.
And I'll start the animation now so you can start to see immediately. You'll notice the airbag deployed, and as the occupant starts to move toward it, we can see this sort of tremendous pressure that the seatbelts are applying on the chest, and it's particularly within the abdomen.
Though actual crash test dummies are still in use and will be into the foreseeable future, the virtual model gives more detailed insight into how the body reacts during a crash.
Here we're seeing 2 rib fractures occurring in this area.
One of the things that we can do when we look at some of the output from these models is really being able to peel back layers and look at how specific bones react to the forces. We can see actually the prediction of actual bones breaking. We can see how internal organs are loaded and see the load paths within the body that you just can't see within a crash test dummy.
Minimizing injuries in a crash through advanced engineering and design is vital, but avoiding crashes altogether is the long-term goal, one that could be achieved someday using what's known as crash avoidance technology.
So some vehicles on the road today have warning systems that might warn you of a vehicle in your blind spot by blinking a light in the mirror, or might warn you that you're following too closely to a vehicle up ahead, and that may issue either a warning or it might actually apply the brakes for you.
And that's just part of crash avoidance. At the MIT Age Lab, they're testing systems that would monitor the blood sugar of diabetic drivers and even detect when a driver's getting drowsy. But the silver bullet to driver safety, according to many researchers, is the concept of connected vehicles.
So connected vehicles is an initiative from the U.S. Department of Transportation that's really a vision of the future where each vehicle would have a communication device that would send a signal that could be received by other vehicles.
This technology has yet to be deployed, but its impact could be massive. Systems that warn us in a crash situation could save countless lives every year.
So you as a driver could know that there's a vehicle coming at you over the hill that you can't see, and maybe they're in your lane, and so it could issue you a warning or even have your vehicle receive a warning.
Connecting every vehicle on the road is still in the concept phase, though it could help us avoid dangerous mistakes. But what about eliminating human error altogether?
I don't think we're going to have door-to-door automated vehicles, but there may be sections of highway where you have the proper equipment and you hand off control to the vehicle itself.
Until the vision of connected cars that drive us from place to place becomes a reality, safety will still be fully in our hands. That means taking personal responsibility for our actions on the road and passing that along to the next generation.
We're going to have people driving cars for probably the next many decades. And as long as people are driving their cars, we've got to focus a lot on behavior and fixing behavior and the behaviors that contribute to crashes. I think all the technology in the world is great, but all the technology in the world is probably not going to prevent somebody from getting in a crash if they're driving in an unsafe way.
For more information on driving safely at all ages, as well as a variety of helpful resources, please visit DiscoveryChannelPatientEducation.com.